Welcome to the Kia Orana Podcast, a show about what you will find, what you will not find in the Cook Islands. And now here's your host, Chantal Napa.
Kia Orana, kia koutou katoto, noko ni ia mātou I Rarotonga nei. This is Chantal Napa. Welcome back to Kia Orana Podcast. Thanks so much for joining me again. As always, I like finding guests that I don't know a lot about, right? And so I asked John Batty to join me today. A couple of weeks ago, I saw John, with one of these things that engineers use, and they're like rolling along, measuring along the river. And I'm like, John, I don't know much about construction. And so would you like to come on the show, please? Because I've had artists, I've had photographers, I've had painters, I've had school teachers, I've had dentists, and always trying to sort of find a topic that people would find interesting. Let's try and go for you construction guys and ladies. Welcome, John. Welcome. Thank you.
Kia Orana, Chantal.
Thank you so much. So I thought we could start off with a little bit, please, John, of how you ended up in Rarotonga. Then we could go to like kind of about how tradesmen get involved in the industry.
Yep, sure.
Hey, how about that? How did you end up in Raro?
Well, my partner and I, we'd been coming to Rarotonga on holidays for quite some time, and I was working in the infrastructure industry at the time back in New Zealand with a company called Humes Pipeline Systems. They're a member of the Fletcher owned group, and we identified, we'd been supplying quite a bit of product to ICI. It was MOIP in those days, so that was Ministry of Infrastructure. And I started doing some technical support presentations to the staff, Monty and the team in those days. Well, Monty's still there and the team with TTV, doing technical updates with those guys while I was over on holiday. So they were getting some good background in terms of the modern products that were coming online. So that's pretty much how I sort of started to integrate into the workings of
what year was that, John?
I was 12, so that would have been 20 something years ago now.
Wow. And I just heard you say TTV. I know what TTV is. Could you please explain to our listeners what that acronym in Rarotonga stands for?
So that is Te Tata Vai, and Te Tata Vai are the network operators for the water systems in Rarotonga. So they manage all of the, Uppy and his team manage all of the infrastructure for water delivery. So that's all of the new infrastructure that McConnell Dow had built, and also the infrastructure that Landholdings has constructed, and also the Chinese company CCCC.
See how I'm like sitting here? I mean, I read about these things in the newspaper, right? I see it on TV. But it's like a language that you speak. When, so which is like any profession. Fishermen have their language. Plumbers have their language. IT people have their language. And construction people have their language. Right? I'm just going to close my door, everyone. The traffic is...
So, and you're right. We do have our own language, and some of it is repeatable in public, and some of it isn't.
Some of it is repeatable in public, and some of it isn't. True, John. True.
but I'd like to say that whatever language we're doing, it's generally connected technically to whatever's going on. There may be the odd adjective that's thrown in that to accentuate a point.
Well, you work for
Landholdings.
Yeah, for Landholdings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, they've been around in Rarotonga. How long have they been around, John?
Bill started the company 20 odd years ago. So Landholdings came, Bill started that company up after he finished up with his then business partner, David Brown and Doherty. So Brown and Doherty built the Rarotonga Hotel.
See, that's a great tidbit
Back in,
for everyone to know.
Back in the 70s. So
Yeah.
that was the first, apart from the airport, that was one of the first sort of real tourism infrastructure construction projects.
Because it was also our first hotel.
Correct.
Not motel.
No.
But our first
Hotel.
and
Tourism
flagship.
Hotel. Yep, was.
Because it
still
was
is.
owned by the government at the
Yep.
time.
Was.
And I remember as a child, like I'm 50, so I remember as a child, say at least 43 years ago, going there for like meals, and the weddings would be held there, and you'd save up forever and a day to have your wedding at the Rarotongan Hotel.
Yep.
And it still is, flagship. So that was Bill Doherty, Brown and Doherty.
Yep.
And that's a big property. I mean, a lot of people who've been to Rarotonga before quite possibly have stayed at the Rarotongan Hotel.
Yep.
You know, which is in the west.
Mm.
In the west. And it's like got a few hundred rooms.
I was, they had a bit of an unfortunate situation with those storm surges that came through.
2 weeks ago, in July, the king tide and that super moon, and
That's
they
it.
just got like everybody from the west up through the south.
Yep.
Huge damage come through.
So I was there the other day just assessing how we can
Help
assist Tata and the team, Tata and Bob with the reconstruction of the damaged area. And, I was looking at the beachfront, and I haven't sort of been there for a while, and, it's nearly 1,000 metres long. That's a kilometre of beachfront. Like you say, there's a ton of rooms.
Yeah, ton of rooms. Ton of rooms. Okay, so Landholdings. But then can you please help me sort of like, how do tradesmen get involved in the industry? Say if we got like young, I don't know, young people sort of.
Well, I'll give you a bit of a historical view from how I got into the trade. And then we can go from there into what generally happens today. And this is, so there's two perspectives, one New Zealand, the other one Cook Island. So in New Zealand, shortly after I left school, while I was at school, actually, let's start there. While I was at school, I didn't really have a particularly good academic record. And that was due to a couple of things, I suppose. One was I wasn't diagnosed until I was about 14 with dyslexia. So dyslexia means that you have trouble reading, writing, and all that sort of thing. And it's if you don't understand it, it's the way your brain's wired. And if you don't understand it and can't see the letters or the numbers, then you're never going to get anywhere. So I was pretty much written off at school. I identified with that at 14. By that stage, I was pretty much done and dusted at school. They didn't have time for me, and I was really losing patience with them. So my father decided that I should do one more year at school, and then he'd get me an apprenticeship of some sort. He was a tradesman. He was fitter and turner, and he worked in a structural engineering company in Lower Hutt, and knew a lot of people in the industry. So I was pretty lucky that I had his help, and his help certainly opened a few doors that quite a few people don't get to.
And you're talking Lower Hutt, New Zealand.
Lower
just
Hutt,
for
New Zealand.
just
Sorry,
for our
yeah,
it's just
good
for
point.
our northern listeners.
Yes.
Of the world, Lower Hutt, New Zealand.
Yes.
Yep.
So he said to me, "What do you want to do?" We went around and had a look at a whole lot of different companies that did different things, engineering companies, joinery factories, and a lot of those businesses were based inside. And I'm not an inside person. My voice isn't conducive to inside. Fairly loud.
I'm nodding, everyone that can't see me.
So that order, and I'm not really I am a metal person, but I'm not really that type of engineer. That didn't really grab me too much. So I said to Dad, "Well, is there any carpentry apprentices going?" And so he located a couple of companies, and we went and had a look. And one of the bigger companies in those days, Angus Construction, they offered me an apprenticeship along with 8 other young men, I suppose, at that time, fresh out of school. Most of us were from either Petone Tech or Nainai College, because they were that Nainai College was the school I went to. They were mainly the trades schools. So I started my apprenticeship when I was 16.
How long ago was that, Tom?
There was.
Come on, do the math.
It was 50 years ago.
Wow. Yeah, cool.
So we got you get, I think I was on about $1. No, it was 45 cents. 45 cents an hour.
45 New Zealand cents.
Yeah.
Not the penny, not UK,
No,
not US.
45
New Zealand cents
Yep.
an hour. Wow.
Yep. And we got, so the good thing about apprenticeships in those days is that you got all your tools, the company bought all your tools, and you paid the company back for that. So we got all our tools, bags, tools and things, and cracked into it. So I suppose at that stage, I was probably earning something like about, I don't know, $25 a week, something like that, 44-hour week.
Mm.
So I used to give my mum $15 a week for board and food.
Yeah.
And then I just managed to save the rest. And you do what you do when you're a kid of that age. You go and buy a motorbike or a car, and you tend to have a bit of a good time with your mates.
Yeah, with the $10 left over.
Yeah, with the $10 left over, that's right. So the apprenticeships in those days were 8,500 hours. So, yeah, and in the 8,500 hours, you had to accomplish quite a few, I suppose they call them key point indicators nowadays. They were milestones in terms of what you had to learn. You weren't just sitting there doing the same thing every day. You had to do a varied amount of work. And then in the first
which is
year,
like 4 years. I'm just doing the numbers in my head.
Yep.
If it's sort of 40 hours a week and there's 50 weeks a year, 4, 5, that's 2,000. So it's about a 4-year apprenticeship.
It is 4 years. And so in the first year, you get to do an initial block course after the first 3 months, because they figure that if you're going to stick at it, you're going to drop out. You're going to drop out in the first 3 months. So the first 6 months, the Central Institute of Technology in Petone got all the apprentices from all the companies together, and you do a full 6-week block course with all of the apprentices in the Wellington area, and that was based in Petone. The old what's the company called? It was the British Leyland Motor Company down over in the Korokoro area. So did 6 weeks, come out of that. That was all good. Then went back to work. And so you're doing a lot of theory in those block courses, as well as some of the practical attributes that they're trying to teach you as well. And went back to work on the sites, did probably about another 6 months, and then did another 3-week intensive block course. It must have been about October, I suppose, that year. And after that 3 weeks, they do an assessment on your capability and ability. You have to do a 2-hour exam, I think it was, at the end of that. And then they mark you as to whether or not you have achieved what you need to achieve to go through to the next stage.
Wow. And so you're about 18 then, eh? After this 2 years.
17.
Yeah, 17. Because I was just listening to you before how your dad said, you can do 1 year more year of school. And yeah, 17.
So it was.
And then do you choose?
Choose.
Then do you specialize? Is that how it works? No.
Carpentry is carpentry.
Yeah.
And you've got to learn, you've got to know and understand across the board. And it's not just across the board. The company that I was working for, Angus Construction, they're heavy commercial construction. The projects that I was working on, the first project was Lower Hutt Courthouse, the rebuild of that. I just joined the company, and we were probably in about the last 12 months of that project. So I saw that through to the end. And then I started on another project called the Court of Appeal. That was up Molesworth Street in Wellington, New Zealand. And
we're still in New Zealand, everyone. We're getting back to Rara, but I'm loving this story. Thank you. We're still in New Zealand.
So that job was great, because when I first got there, there was nothing there. It was an open paddock, and it was smack in the middle of Wellington, and high rise all around us, and there was just nothing there. And I started off building the site sheds and the perimeter fencing to keep everybody safe. Keep people in, keep people out, and have smoker rooms, offices, the whole 9 yards. So as an apprentice, starting right at the beginning is because you normally get chopped and changed around, and you don't get to see a job start to finish. So as a second year apprentice, got into that, and that particular building had and still has very high specification in terms of earthquake strengthening, because it was determined that the Court of Appeal would be one of the places to go for high profile people if there is a super emergency or a particular weather related issue, tsunamis, whatever, that building was going to withstand anything that was pretty much thrown at it. Very high specification for construction. So being involved in that was, it took us nearly a year and a half to get out of the ground. We had to go about 30 foot deep. That's something like about 10 meters deep before we could start building out. Massive foundations, huge underground car parking area.
Yeah.
And the concrete work and the steel reinforcing was, I couldn't get my head around it at the time, because you just weren't building, buildings to those specifications, but it was to withstand some, shall we say, heavy artillery.
Yeah. So I was going to say serious.
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah. So that taught me a lot about quality of construction, and that those learnings stick with you all the way through your career. And that a lot of the guys that build houses, so I'm going to come back to CITC or the CIT in a minute, but the guys that build houses don't get to do that sort of work, and us doing that sort of work don't get to do the housing type situation. So the whole reason for the block courses and the CIT was that when everyone is together, you're intermingling and you're learning about what each other does. You know, I learned how to put a roof together at CIT. I learned all about housing construction at CIT. I didn't do it as an apprentice. And at CIT, the guys who were doing house construction were learning all about reinforcing and concrete work and formwork and all that sort of thing, because they were only doing, you know, foundations for houses and things like that. So that in those days, I think I was probably very, very, very fortunate to have gone through that apprenticeship system, because we had such a wide and varied view of construction, and you don't get that these days. The apprenticeship system's been dismantled. So
that's a statement. The apprenticeship system's been dismantled.
Yeah, there is an apprenticeship system currently running in New Zealand, but it's on a whole different terms, and the apprentice still has to find somebody to work for, but you know, you don't get the leg up like you used to. You got to provide all your own tools. You've got to pay your way through your block.
Yeah, because isn't it like when we were younger?
Yes.
The government assisted the employer.
Correct.
That's how I remember apprenticeships.
Correct.
Were.
Mm-hmm.
So the employer would say to, I don't know, I'm guessing internal affairs.
Yep.
Hey, I've got these 8 guys.
Yep.
It's going to cost me $5,000 the first year for each of them.
Yep.
8 5 so 40 grand. If you could assist me with 40% of that, and it was a great system, the apprenticeship system.
Correct.
And it helped the employer, because then the employer didn't have to find that money for people that weren't actually generating an income yet. And they just needed a little bit of help, and the government would be like, yeah, sure, well, you know, we can help you with 40% or 30% or 50% or, you know,
whatever it was.
And it was a great system.
Yep.
And that system is not around. I don't think we even have that system, here, right?
No.
The cooks, but in any. The system that we currently have in the Cook Islands is that we're, you know, a young guy young person, because we do have females,
our ladies in the industry, and that they'll leave school, they'll come and start working for us, and we'll put them with a tradesman, and they'll learn what the tradesman is doing. And once again, whether it's us building a bridge down in town or whether it's building a house for whomever, doesn't matter, or whether we're doing.
But do we have apprenticeships where you get assistance?
No. Where there's, I suppose the assistance is that the kids will get an apron and a saw, and a hammer, but there is no assistance from anybody to support apprentices. And there is the CIIC training modules, industry.
But that's kind of, you go there, you do the course,
get some basic background,
which is here, and then you come work for someone like you.
Pretty much.
And I think that's government funded, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
and they do a very good job. Very good job.
The Cook Islands, not too training. Is it? Cook Islands Tertiary Training Institute, isn't it?
I think so.
Sure. They used to do like hairdressing things there, and
mechanics, plumbing, plumbing and sanitary, carpentry.
And then they have that other building, don't they, in Aotearoa, that does training as
next
well?
Next to ICI. Yes, that's the
which
that's
is
where they do.
ICI stands for, just for our listeners.
Infrastructure Cook Islands.
Yeah, Infrastructure Cook Islands. Oh, okay. So I heard you say the word bridge. Far out. That bridge down in town near Trader Jack's and the Empire Theatre and the Ministry of Justice. How long you guys been there?
We started that job just before Christmas last year.
Yeah, and we're in August now, 2022.
That the construction of the bridge happened exactly the way we planned it and projected the program to ICI. ICI were the principal. There was a couple of delays relating to that particular project.
Well, how old was that bridge?
The old one,
Yeah,
the original one.
How old was it?
It's
My lifetime old.
Oh, well before us.
Yeah.
The original structure, which was the old double arch bridge, with the and now that was built in the 1920s, and it was constructed on site with just hand mixed concrete, coral, lumps of coral.
Wow.
They used, there was no modern reinforcing. They used railway irons from, there was the old causeway that went out from the Bond store where Trader Jack's is to the boats waiting out. So when they must have stripped off a whole lot of railway irons or something from that. And they used
to
that,
take the stuff to the boats.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. And they must have used a whole lot of that stuff or had some left over, and they used that in the construction of the bridge.
Wow.
And that first bridge that was built was only the central part of that old bridge that we pulled down. So it was probably about 4 or 5 meters wide, if that. So it would have taken 2 horse and carts.
True.
And maybe a pedestrian.
True.
Yep. And that's what it was
years
built
we've been doing that, eh?
And it was built for horse and carts. It was never built for modern traffic. And that was the problem, is that we had container trucks with 40-foot containers going across it when it was never ever designed or built for that.
That's right.
Yeah. And it was a miracle it lasted as long as it did. But that just goes to show the quality of the tradesmen who built the original bridge.
Yeah.
And there was a couple of add-ons. Absolutely.
Testament.
Absolutely. And there were a couple of add-ons on the side of that old bridge that ICI did in the 50s, 60s, I think it was, when trucks and things started to get a bit bigger.
But you're right, there's some huge vehicles on our roads now. I mean, as a child, me growing up here, we never saw big things like
the biggest thing was the bus.
The school bus.
Exactly. Like I said, when we first started coming here 30 years ago, there was no scooters for hire. There was no. I can't remember even seeing a car for hire. If you travelled, you were on the bus or you walked.
No, you're right. Because I interviewed the manager at the time of Polynesian Rentals a couple of years ago in my show, and she was just mentioning to me when they started Polynesian Rentals.
Yep.
And I mean, going back 40 years ago when I was 10, going to school here, I wonder how tourists got their vehicles. They probably just went on the bus.
We did. We just went on the bus.
Well, maybe.
And you did, but anyway, that's
another story.
That's another story.
Yeah, that's another story.
Yeah. So the
that bridge has been like, oh my goodness, like all over. Everyone's just like, come on. But I mean, you could see what you guys were doing. You could see the work every day, and just so did you, what's the word, John? Do you oversee all of that?
So my role is, I'm the contractor's representative. My role is to be the interface between Landholdings Ltd and the principal, and make sure that all of the requirements that are in all the contractual requirements that are in the contract between the two, between the principal and the contractor, are followed and met, and that that is done through me directly to the engineer or the engineer's representative. It's quite formalised. There's a document about how those transactions and interactions take place. And I won't go into it, but it's very technical and yeah, pretty dull and boring. But you got to follow it. Then within our business, Bill Doherty, the owner of the company, has total control over the site. Him and I interact daily, multiple times daily in terms of a project like that, just making sure that all our T's are crossed and I's are dotted. Then James, who is our senior foreman, follows through and sees that all our guys on site who have, so we've got 3-4 different gangs on site, all have different foremans, and that with the information is flowing down to the foremans, and we're getting things right, and the guys are into it and doing the build. So yeah, we're extremely lucky that we've got a team of guys who are extremely motivated, very technically astute, and understand what they need to do. And we go back to, say, when I first started with the company, the construction of Te Ora College. Quite a tricky, while everyone just looks at it and go, oh, a couple of story building, but the foundations for that were quite technical, and that if you get things wrong at that stage, you can't go back. You've got to get everything's got to be right. It's got to be inspected. It's got to be tested.
He's talking about our national high school. For those of you outside of the Cook Islands listening, I went to that high school, Te Ora College, and it's on a hill.
Correct. Yep.
And now it's got it's got an amphitheater in there now. I went in there because my daughter Athena, who you know, which is actually how I met John Everyone, because Athena was sailing.
Yes. And
then so I see you, I didn't know, and you were the one sending out the email to all of us parents, sailing, and I'd be like, Athena, there's an email from John, he's got bullet points there. You got to get something rigging and be at the sailing club, and, I said, oh my gosh, he's very, very bullet point, so-and-so, you're doing this, bullet point, so-and-so, you're doing this, bullet point, right? And that's how I met you, the sailing club, Saturday mornings. I didn't know what you did, I just knew you as John, the sailing guy, who had the bullet points for all the kids to get to the sailing club. And then, I don't know, after about a year, it's like, what do you actually do?
Yeah.
And I suppose you would like that, John, as a release for you, be by the water.
Sailing.
Yeah, sailing.
Oh, absolutely. I've been sailing since I was 7, and that's why I couldn't do an inside job. I've got to be outside. I've got to be, the spray in my face and my hair wet.
Which is how, I met you.
Yep.
And for about a year, I just used to say to you on Saturdays, hi, John. Bye, John.
Yeah.
Bye, Athena. And then afterwards, Athena would be like, that was really difficult. John made us I don't know, fix this, fix that. You'd be like, no, not getting those boats in there unless you know how to put them together and take them apart. And then,
Well, I suppose that
absolutely.
That goes
absolutely.
Back to what I do,
Yeah.
And if you can't fix it,
what happens out on the water?
That's it.
And you don't know how that boat is put together.
That's it.
And I could see that that's what you were trying to aim for in your bullet points to the kids. You're not even getting on the water for an hour and a bit. I need you to, be able to assemble that and disassemble it. Am I right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely correct.
Yep.
Because like you say, boats are like everything else. At the most inopportune time, something will break. And if you can't fix it, well, you're out. potentially you're out in the middle of nowhere. And if you can't fix it, I mean, and let's go back to the Pacifica / Cook Island history in terms of maritime movements around the Pacific. You know, all our I use the word all our forebears either sailed to New Zealand or Australia or the Pacific via the Northern Hemisphere, or we were already here and we were sailing around the Pacific. There wasn't anything else. But we lose sight of that as a society. And I think that society generally has lost a lot by losing those routes to the sea. And, you know, I should imagine that your papa would have sailed from whichever island he was from to another island as a young kid with his papa, because he needed to learn how to get from one place to another, to meet other people, to see how things work in those places, and that generationally has been dismantled and is being lost.
I can see you're very sad while you're chatting, like your whole demeanor changed, you know, when I went into that subject, right? I mean, the children that you do help teach down at the sailing club, what age do they range from, John? Thank you so much.
We at the club, we like to get the kids probably just over 5, something like that, and then they can get the basics of how a boat works, the wind, the water, all of that sort of stuff, which sounds pretty dull and boring, but if you don't understand it, you can't make a boat go. Then as you progress, you know, as Athena did, in a very small boat, and some kids pick it up real quickly, some kids don't, and it's not about anything apart from aptitude and wanting to be able to learn how to do it. And the worst thing that you can do is make a kid do something, because they're automatically going to get the back up. They don't want to do it. Whereas if you lead them to it and show them how it's done and they want it, you're going to get way more mileage out of that than anything else. So I suppose if we use Athena, for example, she started in Optimists. When did she first start going in? She was
we're in
probably
2022, so she started going in 2019.
Yep.
So that was 3 years ago. So she's 13 now. So she was 10.
10. Yep. So, you know, there are a lot of younger kids in the club who, you know, she probably felt that they knew more than her, but because she was older, she was learning quicker. The younger kids don't learn as quick. So, you know, you can take them young, you can take them old, doesn't matter. As long as they got the right attitude to get on the water. And as long as everybody is working in the same direction, you're fine. And boats are like everything else. You look after them, they'll look after you.
Rarotonga Sailing Club, which is in Muri, and then a lot of people can still go there on Saturdays. This is just the visitors want to come. And have a look at what's going on down there at the sailing club.
So we just at the sailing club, and you know, while these times of uncertainty with COVID and the way the world shut down over time, the Rarotonga Sailing Club and Sailing Cook Islands decided that we would take the bull by the horns and bring a sailing coach over from Europe. And that's not a, you know, this
small feat.
Yeah, exactly. We decided to do that because the club members that were heavily involved in the training are there on Saturdays. They want to sail themselves, but we also recognise that the tourists want to go for a sail. that we can do after school programs with a lot of the schools around the place. And there are quite a few adults who actually recognise, Cook Island adults recognise some of their past history that has been lost, and that if they learn how to sail, that might reconnect them with their historical roots. So we brought Jacobo over. He's Spanish, very keen and eager young man, and his wife, Precious. They're living in our community now, and Jacobo is doing, like I said, the Saturday mornings, running the club during the week, renting out boats for tourists, and also doing the after school programs with the school kids and adults.
Fantastic.
Which is, it has just given the club a new boost, a new generation, a shot in the arm. It's the tonic we needed. But you got to take a leap of faith to do that.
Yeah, true. Bring someone all the way from Spain. Fantastic. There you go.
I just thought, for the listeners, that we tried to find somebody within the Cook Islands, within New Zealand, within Australia, and Jacobo stood out because of his enthusiasm and the fact that he had been down to New Zealand before and had undertaken training sessions in NZ, which he was highly recommended from the New Zealand Yacht Squadron for. So that made a difference for us. There are highly suitable people within the Cook Islands who could do the same thing, but they're tradesmen. They're at work.
Yeah, because a lot of you on Saturdays, like yourself, are all volunteering because you're working during the week, so so this guy's focused on that 6 days a week is what I mean. And what you mean.
That's it.
A lot of you are all tradespeople. I mean, the Commodore last year, Tom,
Tom,
he runs a plumbing business. And on Saturdays he donates his time and volunteers. Same with you. You donate your time and volunteer. So that's what you mean by this guy is totally there 6 days a week for this sailing club. Thanks so much, Don. It's been great chatting.
My pleasure. I'm not sure whether some of my ramblings are conducive to sleep. It's not ramblings. We all have amazing stories, right? And I learned so much today, as our listeners would have learned. And it went from land to sea talk, didn't it? Yeah, it did.
It did.
Indeed.
Went from land to sea.
Yep.
So that's how I might title your episode, The Land to Sea Guy. With Landholdings and the sailing club. Thanks everyone. That's our catch up from Rarotonga this week with John Batty, Landholdings, Rarotonga Sailing Club. Thank you so much. I appreciate you spending some time with me today.
My pleasure, Chantal.
Bye for now, everybody. Noko ne ia mātou, aroa i atu kia koto katoa. Kia orana, may you live long, airera, farewell, and kia manuia, good luck and good health. Bye for now.